The Septon sobbed, but did not resist as two guards forced him to bow over the block. He raised his family's ancestral greatsword. I, Robb Stark, King of the North, of rivers and hills and Cracklaw Point, sentence you to die. And he brought the blade down. The sound was final, a heavy, meaty crack, followed by silence. The head rolled across the stone and came to rest before Grey Wind, who sniffed it once before turning away. Blood pooled on the courtyard flagstones. A raven flapped overhead, startled from its perch. No cheers. No calls. Only silence, the silence of men who knew the implications of what they had just witnessed. He stood over the body, breathing deeply, ice in his hands. Then he turned and looked around at all the people gathered in the courtyard. Let this be the end of false prophets, he called out loudly. Let no man, controlled by foreign powers, be allowed to abuse the gods for his own personal gains or that of his benefactors. He looked around. Today marks another shift in the organization of our continent. Since the dissolution of the Seven Kingdoms, those who controlled Old Town controlled the most devout and the High Septon. No longer. From now on, the most devout of these regions will no longer be housed in that wealthy and scheming city in the far south, but here in the heart of the Riverlands. A new congregation will be built for them near Harrenhal. There, the highest religious minds of the seven in our kingdom will assemble and decide upon religious matters for our people. Because everyone knows the sway that houses Hightower and Tyrell have over the Starry September, the Royces and Baratheons have also shown interest in joining the new order. Invitations will also be sent to the Westerlands and to the handful of 7 believers on the Iron Isles. Together they will choose a High Septon that wishes to do the gods' work, not that of Reacher lords. Murmurs started everywhere. Some northern lords looked surprised and confused, others satisfied. River lords looked unsure and scared, others angry. All the lords behind the dais looked stoic, all had been told the broad lines of this beforehand. The others would have to come to terms with this new arrangement, but they would have no choice. No longer would pompous decadent men sit in Old Town and proclaim to speak in name of the seven, only to speak the words of the Lord that fills their tables with extravagant foods and their pockets with gold. He stepped away. The lords began to disperse, slowly and without words. Lord Benjen Riswell lingered, then left. Lady Daisy Mormont limped toward the ramparts, having never fully recovered from an old battle wound. Lothar Vance stared at the blood until finally turning away. Domeric approached him. "Will you walk with me towards the Godswood, your grace?" He nodded silently. Like his father, he liked to pray after taking a life. Domeric knew him long enough to know this, but it seemed he wanted to discuss something, nonetheless. They walked in silence for a while, until they neared the Godswood and were finally alone. "Why Harrenhal, your grace?" "The old fortress has already known multiple changes during your reign, and it is controlled by a 3-year-old boy. I heard you plan to expand your Order of the Occult to it too in the future. Won't that give the Tullys of Harrenhal too much power?" "It might." He agreed. "And I will rethink building out the Order there. It might indeed be too much. Yet, Harrenhal was a well-thought-out choice for this." "What other places did you consider?" his good brother asked him. "White Harbor, but I decided against it. I don't want the power of the Seven to increase in the north. It could have also weaponized the Mandaealis against us in the far future, which is a risk I won't take." The Lord of the Dreadfort nodded, seemingly agreeing with that assessment. "We ruled out Duskendale for a similar reason. I don't want it too close to Blackwater Bay either. Besides, placing it on the coast would increase power projection over other kingdoms, but also enlarge the risk of spies, infiltrations and foreign influence. Another obvious candidate was Riverrun, but that would entail major danger in the future. House Tully already is the Lord Paramount. How long until another zealous, ambitious member is persuaded by a High Septon to proclaim himself the King of the Riverlands? Especially when he is housed next door. No, Riverrun is too dangerous." "I agree. It would have been a mistake." The head of House Bolton confirmed. Then the only viable candidates remaining were Maidenpool, Seaguard and Harrenhal. However, it had to be far enough away from other kingdoms to discourage rebellions and invasions to take control. That eliminated Maidenpool. Nonetheless, our most likely prospects of joining the new order are based in the east, which makes Seaguard unsuitable. That's how I arrived at Harrenhal. And its child ruler. Lord Hoster's hold over his nephew. It is a problem, but it will solve itself in time. I will have strong influence on who will be initially appointed to the most devout. Lord Hoster will lose power in 12 years. Something that can easily be bridged. Besides, the crown has a stake in Harrenhal too. Everything will be watched closely. Well done, Your Grace. I wouldn't have done it any differently, now that I know all the facts. His good brother responded, as they reached the slender weirwood tree in the center of the godswood. Its face looked sad, which was in stark contrast with the songbirds singing from the tops of the nearby trees. Thank you, Dom. Pray with me. Silently, Bolton kneeled next to him. Together they prayed for their families at home and that his plan would work and bring more stability to the Riverlands in the future. Chapter 103, Journeying Home. 29 AC. King Robb Stark. After several weeks in Riverrun setting the Riverlands back in order, he had finally been able to leave his mother's home. His army had left the capital of the Riverlands in all different directions. Thousands of soldiers had already started the journey north to Seaguard, and he would join them there in a few weeks' time as he had one more task for which he found himself riding towards the castle that emerged in the distance, Stonehenge. His mind ran over his distribution of forces, as his horse brought him ever closer to the seat of House Bracken. A little over 2,000 northern soldiers would stay in the Riverlands for the next few months, to make sure that neither his nor Hoster's authority would be challenged once he left. 3 groups of 700 men, led by young but experienced noblemen without duties back home. The first one would be commanded by Mors Umber and they had already left for Riverport, where they would be based. All 700 of those had chosen to start a new life in the Riverlands, and they would be settled around Blackwater Bay after 3 more months of service, receiving land or coin to start anew there. Mors and his Sumberkin would facilitate this, before Smalljan's younger son returned home to Last Hearth. A second group under Sir Walton Woolfield would remain in Riverrun. He would help Hoster enforce his demands, as well as continue efforts to rebuild the center of the Riverlands. They would all be returning home in 6 months' time. The third group under Robert Harkley was already positioned at Stony September, from where they were working hard on restoring the southern Riverlands. His men were tough and hardened fighters, mostly hailing from the clans, Bear Island and even Skagos. In time, they would return north, but for now he needed them to project power up until the border. The southern Riverlands had been heavily depopulated, and the damage was extensive. A small standing force there would do wonders to deter bandits and raiders. Already the Tullys were sending small groups of colonists towards their southern border, mostly peasants from the northern interior around the sources of the Blue and Red Fork. Formerly, the population in the borderlands had largely existed of people which had been native to the land, former citizens of the Reach, intermingled with thousands of others which had fled King's Landing and Blackwater Bay and a small group of Riverlanders. Hundreds of thousands of people had died in the area, all of the non-natives had been killed or starved to death, but large parts of the original population had as well. Now, a second attempt would be made by settling recently depopulated areas with 10,000 peasants and small craftsmen hailing from Mallister, Shawnee, Free and Greensnake lands. Ironically, it was clear where Hoster was getting his inspiration. He was doing the same on the Parrel and Menning lands as was happening in Blackwater Bay but with different population groups. He didn't mind. Traitors among the small folk had apparently contributed to Tyrell's quick march through the territory. Curtailing outside influence was something he would always encourage. He longed for home but couldn't yet go. Ricard and Rickon led the bulk of the army to Seaguard, where they would prepare to sail home in stages. His eldest son would, per his directive, make use of the time to tour Flint's Finger and the Rills. It was important that the local people saw the royal family. John would do the same on the other side, visiting their allies in Runestone and stopping at Oldcastle before arriving at White Harbour. While his sons took care of the southern part of the north, he would do a small royal procession in the Riverlands. After Stonehenge, he would make royal entrances in Fairmarket and Wendish Town before rejoining the army at Seaguard. The sun lowered across the sky and its shadows danced over the surface of the Red Fork. 800 men marched behind him, their mail glinting like fish scales in the pale sun. A sizable escort, meant to impress the Brackens and put them on edge. Stonehenge drew closer, squat and brown, its towers heavy with age. The fortress looked more stubborn than imposing, like its master. Tor was riding with him at the front, Grey Wind easily pacing beside his destrier, as his lieutenants rode behind him. He had left his loyal lords at Seaguard to prepare for the journey home, only Stark and Sir Wyn Bannerman accompanied him. At his back rode Sir Rob Corden, Eddard Molyn and William Sir Wyn, the last being a very distant cousin and small vassal of the main line. Eddard Molyn, Horlis Molyn's youngest son, carried the royal banner. There had been no raven sent, no herald dispatched before them. He had chosen to come unannounced, with strength enough to remind the Brackens of where the power in the Riverlands now rested. They had not yet closed half the distance when riders appeared on the road ahead. 24 at most, all in the rust brown and red of House Bracken. They halted across the path in a half-circle, lances down, their horses stamping nervously at the sight of the great host behind him. The leader was a lean youth with a hooked nose and dark, impatient eyes. He carried himself stiffly in the saddle, though the gilded bridle and intricately woven cloak on his shoulders marked him as no common knight. "My Lord King," he called, the title begrudgingly spoken. "I am Sir Humphrey Bracken, grandson to Lord John Ouse, Master of Stonehenge. What business brings a northern army to my grandfather's gate without word or herald?" Humphrey was the second son of Sir Henry Bracken, Lord John Ouse' godson. He recalled that much from his council, although he had not met the young knight yet. Hendry's eldest boy, Sir Limond, had shown courtesy and even good favour toward the Starks during their campaign in the Reach, but the rest of that branch of Bracken scowled at anything northern. Sir Hendry most of all, and his other two sons followed his lead. He reined in, Grey Wind padding closer until the Bracken horses snorted and shied from his teeth. The direwolf's hackles stood high, lips curled back. In contrast, his own voice carried calm and steady over the road. "I wished to discuss things with your grandfather, now peace has returned to the Riverlands. No harm is meant to Stonehenge, so long as no harm is shown to me." He was not afraid of the young Riverlord's bravado. Less than 24 lances were aimed at him, whilst his cavalry moved to his side from behind him. Sir Humphrey's jaw tightened. His eyes swept the length of the column, over the pikes and mail, over the archers with their quivers heavy and the cavalry urgently riding to the front. "You come with near 1,000, he replied. "It looks like war, not peace." The young Molyn gave a booming laugh before he himself could answer. "If it were war, Bracken, you and your 24 would be corpses on the road." He silenced his guardsman with a glance. "The roads are not yet safe to travel. The last remaining raiding bands still roam the land. My lords found it prudent that I come with a significant escort, to ensure my safety." It was a blatant lie, but there was nothing the young Bracken could do about it. "I will enter Stonehenge with a small company only. My men will camp beyond your walls, until I have spoken with Lord John Ouse. That will serve, will it not?" he proposed, feigning it as a question when it was really a demand. Sir Humphrey hesitated, shifting in his saddle. His men muttered uneasily, but none moved to bar the road. At last, he gave a curt nod. "Very well. I will take you to him. My grandsire does not yet know of this visit." "That much is plain," he responded. "Lead on, Sir Humphrey." The Bracken knights wheeled their horses, and the King's Guard followed at a measured pace. Rob left the bulk of his strength behind, under the command of Corden, to oversee the construction of a camp. With him he brought 24 sworn men. Tor's face betrayed nothing, as Grey Wind loped at his side all the way to the gate. Stonehenge opened grudgingly. The old portcullis groaned as it was raised, and the smell of horse and earth spilled out. Rob rode through into the yard, beneath the gaze of Bracken spearmen posted along the walls. No horns greeted him, no banners stirred in welcome. Inside, Sir Humphrey dismounted and turned briskly. "This way, your grace. My grandsire keeps to his solar these days." He followed, Tor and Grey Wind in tow, climbing worn steps within the keep. With a nod, he had ordered his guards to remain in the courtyard. His hand rested easy on the pommel of his sword, though he did not expect steel to be necessary here. Still, the tension was thick as mortar in the walls. At last, they came before a heavy oaken door. A servant pushed it wide, and the smell of smoke and parchment drifted out. Inside, bent over a table piled with scrolls, sat Lord John Ouse Bracken, grey, broad of chest still, his hair gone to thin wisps of white. He looked up with surprise flickering sharp in his dark eyes. "Your Grace," John O said, his voice gravel. "I had not thought to see you here." He stepped forward into the chamber, Grey Wind at his heels, and the door closed behind them. To silently taking watch on the other side, as Sir Humphrey left. "I am aware, Lord John O's. My apologies for the sudden intrusion, but I wished to share words with you before I left to go back to Winterfell, and I had little time to prepare or send word." He lied smoothly. Both knew it would have cost no time to send a rider in front of him, to signal his coming albeit a few hours beforehand. "No apologies necessary, Your Grace. You are always welcome in Stonehenge," Lord John O smoothly replied. "What did you wish to talk about?" "The war, and House Bracken's involvement in it," he bluntly responded. A frown etched itself between the wrinkles on Lord Bracken's forehead. "Our involvement, Your Grace. My men fought under your command at Pink Maiden, and many following battles in the Reach. My grandson Limond still carries the scars to prove it." "Aye, he does. Sir Limond is a gift to your house. He is intelligent, loyal and capable, good with a sword too." His praise seemed to ease Lord John O somewhat. "I agree. He will become a great head to my house one day." He nodded in agreement. "I would like to talk about that too." Lord John O's looked at him questioningly. "Well," he started. "It is no secret that House Bracken was divided at the start of the Civil War. That much is true. Many of my grandsons fought against each other. My Tully grandsons divided, my Blackwood and Dare descendants poised against others. Aye, and opposed to Sir Limond stood his younger brother Sir Lucan." He added, "Lord John O's could only agree. A devastating mistake, which he will pay for at the wall for the rest of his life." He nodded. "But many others also stayed neutral. Your kin from House Leicester, but also Sir Henry, and his two other sons. Can you blame them? No one wishes to fight brother against brother, right cause or not. Limond did his duty for his house, and it pleases me to hear you praise him for it. But you cannot blame his brothers for their absence." "No, I cannot." He agreed. "Sirs Humphrey and Otto have no fault in all of this, and me nor mine carry ill will against them. However, they are not the ones I was referring to." A flash of realization dawned in Lord John O's eyes, but he did not let him interrupt him. Sir Henry should have been there, not his son Limond. Why was the eldest grandson sent to repent for his younger brother's actions? Why was the father not there, holding his son accountable? The Lord of Stonehenge licked his lips, buying precious time before answering his question. Henry was too stricken with grief and despair to act. Despite the boy's many faults, Henry loves Lucan. He could not be moved against him. Did Limond not love his brother then? He countered. He did march against his brother. Limond has ever been dutiful. He did what I asked of him, whether it pained him or not. Aye, that I can believe. Sir Limond has ever followed orders during the war. Be they questionable or difficult, it mattered not to him. For this I want him rewarded." Lord John O's ears perked up at this. "There is no need, Your Grace. He simply did his duty," he replied casually, although his eyes betrayed his ever-present greed. "Nonsense, I insist upon it. It is time that he receives what is rightfully his." "And what may that be, Your Grace?" "His rightful title as heir to Stonehenge. You said it yourself, he will make a fine head of your house. Why delay the opportunity to develop his potential? By law he is your rightful heir, not his father. The old succession laws of the Riverlands, and even those from the north or the ones formerly from the Seven Kingdoms, all state that the eldest grandson trumps the nephew and godson. He carries your name and your blood. He should be your heir. Besides that, he is capable and is held in the greatest esteem in both Riverrun and Winterfell. I do not see the problem." Panic seemed to flicker through the old Bracken's eyes, although he hid it well. Nonetheless, Grey Wind had felt it too. After all these years, their mutual bond was so strong that he felt it through his companion clearer than ever. "Nothing pleases me more than your praise of Limond, but Henry has been groomed as my heir for over 25 years. I cannot take it from him now. Limond will get what he deserves in time, and my blood will reign over our ancestral lands thereafter. I have no problem with it. My brother died when Henry was young, I raised him. His marriage to Barbara only confirmed what he already was, my son. I understand the sentiment, Lord John O's, but in the eyes of the law he is but your nephew and godson. He has no right on your grandson's birthright. It is the same anywhere else. Winifred Mondale's husband Harmond has also been passed over for the inheritance of White and Harbour in favor of their eldest son. It is the law. Lord John O's frowned. You are doing this as punishment for his inaction during the war. It is true that I have more faith in your grandson than your godson, I do not deny it. Sir Henry served in my council for years. He was given power to represent the Riverlands and make decisions for the whole of the kingdom, but when the time comes that I need him he abandons my side and holds himself up in your castle. Nonetheless, this doesn't change the succession laws. I have not created them. I do not wish for another succession crisis in the Riverlands in a decade, when your godson thinks he has the right to usurp his son's birthright. You will create a succession crisis in the Riverlands by pushing this. No one objects to the current state of things. Lord John O's retorted. He shook his head. The law objects, Lord Bracken. Besides, what you say isn't true. Multiple nobles have come to me freely to talk about Sir Henry and Sir Utho's disdain for Sir Limond's friendships in my army. They freely mocked him when at Riverrun, even obstructing him from talking to war companions he fought and bled with. Men of noble birth, of houses that have served Winterfell loyally for thousands of years. Men whom protected me and my sons in battle. Men who bled for us, lost kin for us. I will not let that pass, it was one slight too many. What do you wish me to do? Banish my godson and heir who has stood beside me for over 30 years? No, Sir Henry can of course stay at your court in the highest offices. But you will declare to the world, both in your inner court and to the other riverlords, that Sir Limond is your heir. From this day on, the crown will recognize him as such in all correspondence. When the day comes that you sadly should come to pass Riverrun and Winterfell will recognize Limond as the new Lord Bracken. All other claimants will be declared usurpers and shipped off to the wall with the help of the might of the crown, am I clear? A defeated look came over the proud face of the old Lord Bracken. Yes, you are, your grace. Oh, and one more thing. If something should happen to Sir Limond, his eldest daughter will become his heir, unless he has gotten a son by then. If this child, be it male or female, were to still be underage, then it will be raised in Riverrun under the tutelage of Lord Hoster. I will have no low-born schemes inside this family that would split my kingdom apart. Am I understood? Now Lord John O seemed offended. I would never wish harm on my own kin. I do not need your threat to wish the best for my grandson and ensure his safety. Good, then we are in agreement. I will leave it to you to ensure that his father and brothers are of the same mind. The Lord of Stonehenge looked resigned to the decision. He knew the old man. He could see in his dark eyes that deep down he had long realized Limond would be a better ruler than Henry. He had just become too old to risk a succession crisis over it. However, now his hand was forced. 10 days later. Prince Ricard. The summer sun hung low over the windswept coast when he first glimpsed the grey towers of Flint's Finger. The long causeway that wound up the hill towards to the keep was empty but for his own escort, 20 men of Winterfell's guard in their direwolf livery and 2 members of the King's Guard. The sea battered endlessly against the rocks below, as his ship rocked against the village dock. The cries of gulls carried far on the salt wind, drawing his eyes towards the lands around him. It was a hard and lonely country, yet the flint banner, the grey stone hand upon a white inverted pall of black and grey, still flew proud from the battlements. The gates opened at his approach, and the men of the castle turned out in force, lean warriors still wearing the rough scars of recent campaigning. At their head stood young Lord Bimflint, 20 years of age, his beard short and black as raven's wings. Behind him loomed his mother, Lady Syrin, and 2 sisters, their gowns plain and dark, their eyes hollow with mourning. His own cousin Wenda, formerly Whitefee now Flint, didn't look any better. Nonetheless, they all bowed respectfully to him. Winterfell is always welcome at Flint's Finger. Your presence honors us, my prince. Lord Bim voiced loudly and, after he dismounted, he clasped his arm. His grip was strong, though there was grief in his former war companion's gaze. He inclined his head. No banners are held above those of the Flints of the Finger in Winterfell. You have served loyally for many centuries and sacrificed much these past decades. The Flints have bled with the North and House Stark more than once, a thing we will never forget. Lord Bim nodded thankfully at his kind words, before leading him and his Kingsguard inside. Within the hall the welcome was plain but heartfelt. Many of the household wished to make his acquaintance and he humoured all of them with a few words. They drank salt ale and ate fish hauled fresh from the sea, bread coarse with oats, and smoked mutton. He sat beneath the high seat with Lord Bim, and the talk turned, as it must, to war and loss. We have lost much, these past wars. Bim said quietly, his fingers tightening round the cup. My grandfather died fighting the Dragon Queen, an unsullied pike took him through the gut while he held the line. My uncle Harlon fell storming a castle in the Riverlands. Two of my grandfather's cousins had previously died at Atlanta, one of his nephews at Fairmarket. After all that, my father had hoped the grief of our house would be behind us. Harlon had left a pregnant wife, and he and his other brothers and remaining cousins also fathered children, thereby again growing the ever-enlarging Flint family. Almost everyone you see on the 5 tables closest to us are my kin, either by marriage or by blood. Lord Bim continued, as he looked over the faces of dozens of his kin. There the Lord of Flint's finger pointed. To a table on the right sit the descendants of the 2 brothers that fell at Atlanta, together with the descendants of their sisters who had remained behind and ever mourned their loss. He then pointed to a table on the left. There sits the son of the nephew that fell at Fairmarket, together with his last remaining uncle and his cousins, the daughters of Torben, my father's favorite cousin. He nodded, as he looked over the 4 young women, as they sat by their families. 2 sat with their husbands and small children, 1 seemed to be caring for a single child alone. The last one seemed lonely, as she silently looked at a tapestry on the wall. I knew Torben, a good man and fine company. Never a dull moment with him. He fought under my command in the center with the infantry. He fought bravely, until he fell in the fighting, never to get back up again. He responded slowly. Torben had a way of making people smile. His 4 daughters had all married into minor local houses. All 4 husbands served in our household guard during the war. Only 2 returned home with me, both others had been friends of mine. The youngest daughter hasn't taken as well to widowhood as her elder sister. Probably, because she doesn't have a child of her own to take her mind of things. My mother says that I will have to arrange for a new marriage for her soon, so she can start anew. I have been looking at some of our noble guardsmen as a potential match, but not many remain to choose from. Flint explained gloomily. The young lord sighed loudly and sadly, before continuing. This war was even worse. Torben was slain with the infantry, but the real tragedy of the Battle of Fallen Flowers was with the cavalry, as it was with most northern houses. Nonetheless, I feel we had the worst of it. My father died there, together with his uncle Edric. 3 more distant cousins died beside them. Edric's eldest son had died even earlier, cut down in the press when the Reach's cavalry performed their first charge. Weeks later, late Uncle Harlon's son Tristan died in a skirmish with Tarly forces, ending his line. He looked across the hall, where women sat hushed, black-veiled. My grandmother buried sons, as do my aunts and cousins, my sisters mourn betrothed they never wed. And that is but the nearer kin. Everyone here has lost more than one. The finger is emptier now than it has ever been. He listened in silence, the words heavy in his chest. He thought of his own cousins buried far from home, of the banners that had ridden south with his father and never returned. It will never be forgotten, he said at last. I have heard my father speak often of your grandsire, who died serving him in the War of Independence, and of the kin you have given since. He has never spoken of House Flint but with honor. I remember many of them myself, all of them did your house proud. Know that your loss is not forgotten in Winterfell. Lord Bim let out a slow breath, as though some burden had eased, though only by a hair. It is what loyalty demands. But loyalty thins a family fast. I have buried too many bones for so young a lord. Then he smiled, a cynical smile which only showed when you had no more tears left. We had a large family, we had a lot to lose. Ironically, our family remains large. Most distant male line branches have been trimmed or completely cut down, but many female line branches remain. Most intermingled with the local nobles, binding them to us in some shape or form. Some others married amongst each other or even among other further branches of our house in the northern mountains or widow swatch. Besides that, me and my 2 brothers remain. Luckily enough both hadn't been old enough to accompany me and my father south. In total my grandfather has 6 grandsons left able to carry on the family. 2 more male line second cousins remain. House Flint will endure. He agreed. It will, and it will see itself rewarded for its sacrifice. However, I can't help but notice many of your direct cousins aren't here. Bim nodded. Of my grandfather's descendants, only my siblings and I remain at the finger. Uncle Harlon's line has been extinguished, from Uncle Edric's line only Theodore remains. He has chosen to remain in Prince John's service instead of returning home. I don't blame him. There is nothing for him here. His mother died long ago. My youngest uncle Torgan received lands from my wife's family long ago. My cousins will return to their new home at Sea Dragon Point there, instead of here. My aunt lives in Barrow Hall with her late husband's kin. Her only remaining son received lands around Blackwater Bay. She has written me a letter that she plans to move there too once he is settled in. In the meantime, my mother is pestering me to quickly find good matches for my sisters outside of the finger, as their betroths have both fallen during the war. In time, only me and my brothers will build a family here. He listened intently. This sad history of House Flint was important to him. He would be their king one day. He would have to know the reasons for their future actions. He needed to understand his future vassals and know their mutual connections. They switched topics and spoke of lighter things. He talked with Bim's siblings and his mother and asked about ancient Flint history and their present ties to other houses. Apparently, Lord Bim was in early talks with Sigurd for a betrothal between one of his sisters and Sir Joseph Mallister. Even after all their losses, House Flint still loyally fulfilled his father's wishes by sending one their daughters south. His own sister Sarah would love having one of Flint's sisters as a good sister in Sigurd, and northern influence there would grow when Lord Jason's 2 eldest grandsons will both have taken a northern bride. When the evening deepened, he asked to walk the walls. From there the view stretched across the lonely headland, sea and stone, no fields nor towns to soften it. Flint's finger stood like a sentinel at the edge of the world. Hard land breeds hard men, he voiced, the wind snapping at his cloak. Hard, Bim replied, but fewer now. Still, we endure. That is all the Flints can do. Ricard set his hand upon the cold stone of the parapet. And endure you shall. My father will see the strength of the Flints restored, and I will see it, if he does not. The North remembers, and it takes care of its own. Bim gave him a long look, then the faintest shadow of a smile touched his mouth. Then perhaps there is hope. In the meantime, my people will tend to their flocks and fishing nets as they have always done. Beneath them, the surf thundered ceaselessly against the rock, as it had for 1,000 years. Above, the banners of the direwolf and the grey stone hand flapped side by side in the salt wind. At the same time, Prince John Stark. The sea wind struck sharp against his face as the galley cut across the waters of the Bight. The grey-green waves slacked against the hull, and ahead the white walls and high towers of White Harbour gleamed in the afternoon sun. For all that the north was vast and proud, White Harbour had always seemed to John the most like a southern city, large parts of its architecture modelled after their overlords' roots in the Reach. Everyone had always told him this, but now that he had visited the castles along the Mandea he could see it clearly. Yet it was northern too, through and through, its Mandeali lords bound by blood and loyalty to House Stark for centuries untold. Its blend visible in most architecture. The Wolf's Den, a millennia-old testament to its ancient First Men history. The harbour teemed with life as his ship drew closer. Fisher boats skimmed between heavier cogs and trading carracks, gulls shrieked overhead, and the smell of salt and fish hung heavy in the air. Men pointed as they caught sight of the direwolf banners fluttering from his convoy of 3 galleys, and a cheer rose from the quayside. He could not help but stand straighter, a prince of the north, though a part of him felt the weight of expectation press more heavily with every step toward shore. Waiting for him at the docks was the host of White Harbour. Lord Wylis Marndaly himself stood tall despite his age, wrapped in silks of sea green and silver, his girth as notable as the warmth of his smile. Close to him stood his daughters, Lady Winifred, her husband Harmond Umber, and their sons Sir Wyman and Sir Winder. Sir Wyman stood on his grandfather's right, as was expected from the heir to White Harbour, accompanied by his young wife Alissa, formerly from House Lock. Lord Wylis' younger daughter Lady Wyler Whitefy, stood on the other side, together with her son Edric, returned 2 months before from war. His elder cousin looked far older than his years, as all who had fought in the south now seemed to, yet his smile when he caught John's eye was genuine and unguarded. This surprised him. He had not seen him smile since that fateful day in the Reach. "Our prince has come to White Harbour," Lord Wylis boomed, his voice carrying over the clamour of the docks. He stepped forward, his arms wide. "The sea brings one of the North's finest sons home, and the city rejoices." He disembarked, boots striking the stone quay, and bent his head respectfully. "My lord, White Harbour's welcome is as grand as the tales say. My father sends his greetings and his trust." "Your father shall ever have mine," Lord Wylis replied, gripping John's shoulder with surprising strength for a man his age. "Come. You are a Stark, and these are your halls as much as Winterfell's." Lady Wyler embraced him firmly, her eyes shining with unspoken emotion. 17 and grown tall, a man now, she murmured. "My husband loved you like a son. Your father named you after him, and to have a John Stark running around Winterfell and Dragon's Lair always brought him joy. You are most welcome, both here and at Sea Dragon Point." He thanked her kindly. His cousin clapped him by the forearm, grinning despite the solemnity of the moment. "The Whitefy greets the sowing wolf," he voiced, half in jest, but the fondness in his voice was clear. He had spent years with the Whitefys at Dragon's Lair and had always thought of Edric as another older brother. It was clear the feeling was mutual, even after he lost his real younger brother. His cousin's wife Mara, formerly Umber, was also there, which surprised him. He greeted her heartily nonetheless. Together they rode from the harbour up to the new castle. The streets were lined with townsfolk shouting blessings and tossing rushes before their horses. Fang seemed to like the attention. He found himself studying every face in the crowd, every alley, weighing the city not just as a guest, as he had done here on his previous visits. His time in the south had changed him. He subconsciously studied defenses, social dynamics and cleanliness to determine the risk of disease outbreaks. The next morning, after the customary greetings and feasting the night before, he found himself in Lord Wylis' solar. A fire burned low in the hearth, drawing the eyes to a carved mermaid on the mantel, as it heated the study whilst the sun was only slowly rising to warm the land. The great lord filled the room with his presence, yet his tone was quieter now, heavy with matters that lay beneath the surface splendor. His grandson Wyman was also present, sitting on a smaller chair at the side of the desk. "White Harbour prospers still," Wylis said, his fingers steepled before him. "The fleets return, the markets swell, but scars remain. My folk have lost brothers, sons, fathers. Trade grows, aye, but mouths must be fed and coffers mended. We walk a narrow road between plenty and want. Many troops returned home by way of our port. We had to feed them, this has depleted our stores." He listened, recalling his father's counsel, a prince must hear before he speaks. "Pirates circle the seas," Wylis continued. "Deserters from the Reach and Ironborn unwilling to stop raiding have joined existing bands on the Stepstones. The result is a sharp increase of attacks on ships in the area. Our trading partners are losing gold and blood, which is felt by us. Traders on their way from Salt Spear to White Harbour, with a stopover at Pentos, never arrive. Their ships captured, the crew slaughtered or forced into service of the pirates. And within, there are those who wonder about our rewards for the war. Some say they haven't seen enough." His eyes fixed on John's, sharp and searching. "You will tell your father, we are loyal, and will ever remain so. Yet, it would strengthen our position if we could have more good news for some of the more critical voices amongst my court." He drew a steady breath. "My lord, my father has never doubted the faith of House Marndaly. He knows the North stands because of vassals such as you, and he will not forget it. Concerning the good news, you have plenty. 2 of your own vassals, a Waterman and a Wells, have received lands along Blackwater Bay. Your grandson and his men returned with loot, and all those passing through your port have partly spent theirs in your city. He voiced, as he motioned to Sawiman. More is yet to come. My father wishes to enlarge our trading fleet, as well as our military defenses. Investments will flow through White Harbor in the coming years for these purposes. You will also be the single largest benefactor of investments not directly given to your house. Investments in ports on Bolton or Carstark lands. They will increase trade with you as the regional hub. Enlargements of glass gardens in the center of the north. The Mirish glass will be offloaded upon your docks. Most immigrants to Blackwater Bay will depart your port, in return trade and riches will flow back. My father also wishes to make a new round of trade agreements with the free cities. Bravos, Pentos and MY are most of all. All will benefit your house. Before the war broke out, we were even looking at establishing a trade route from White Harbor to Eben. My uncle Rukan thinks it to be feasible, and with his newfound wealth he plans to construct a trading fleet of his own for just this purpose, with my father's blessing. It would give us a trade lane far away from the pirates of the Stepstones. His father had written him a letter giving him permission to start early negotiations about this with the Mandalis. Later on, he would come in himself to make the deals. Lord Wylis looked thoughtful. Your uncle Brandon asked me to build ships, but I did not know yet for what purpose. You would benefit from this greatly, as salted cod and whale oil from Lorath would flood your markets, as well as exotic spices from South. Silver from Eben to supply your silversmiths, and gold to be used in the old mint. Maybe in time even tapestries from Norphos could make their way here, from which they could make their way around West Eos. It was clear that the Lord of White Harbor immediately recognized the opportunities. You talk about imports. But what could we export to them instead? I don't believe your uncle's ships will leave empty, and my traders need to make coin and find places to sell their wares before they can buy any more. He nodded. Your beers are prized as far away as the port of Eben. Many barrels can start making their way east, greatly profiting your brewers. Your silversmiths can sell their finished artworks back, which would find willing markets in Bravos and Lorath, while logs are always needed in the island nation. On top of that, we'll always find happy buyers in the cold, wet lands of the shivering sea. All of that would indeed please my people. It would please your father to hear then that I have talked to my own vassals about increasing our wool production. Sadly, some of our sheep herders were lost during the war, but they have large families and in time extra and larger flocks could be established. Lord Wylis answered. That will indeed please my father. I have just come from Oldcastle, and they too seem interested in expanding their flocks of sheep. Similar calls will go out to my uncle in Moat Cailin, and to the Hornwoods, Sawins and the Flints of Eastwatch. For years the Bravo Sea have asked us to increase our wool trade. If we are to start supplying as far as Eben, we will need every house to do their share. It will also allow all of them to partake in the spoils, bringing wealth to the general region. My father will be in contact with more information. Until then we would ask that you keep up the pace on building and outfitting new ships. A great plan, young prince. You have my congratulations. We will fondly await news from your father on the matter. He inclined his head. I can't take all the credit, my lord. My father, my uncles, and their advisors have done most of the work. Humble too, you indeed are a prince. Lord Wylis laughed. They shared bread, while discussing the impact the war had had on House Mandaly and the losses it had entailed on its manpower. It seemed most of the casualties came from among the day laborers and journeymen that had been levied into the Mandaly army. The good news was that this meant that there was little damage to the economic fabric of the city. The bad news was that new crews for ships were traditionally recruited from amongst their midst. This would prove harder now in the future. That evening, John walked with Edric along the sea walls, the midday sea breeze cooling and wet. The city stretched below them, great activity visible along the docks in the harbour. I heard that you held your own with my Grandsea, Edric said with a grin. Not all can. John shrugged. I was lucky enough to have been chosen as the bringer of good news by my father. Maybe, but good news is what the North needs right now, Edric replied. Whoever its messenger, he will be celebrated. I think your father knows this. He also knows you to be capable enough to bring it. He looked out over the deep waters, the sunlight reflected on the waves. Edric was probably right about father. Ever since the beginning of the war, he had always put him and Ricard in honored and visible places. He felt thankful for it, but ever since the shores of the north had come into view a week ago, he could only think about his son. The boy was close to a year old but had never seen his father nor known his mother. What would the effects on him be? Would he even like him? Or would he shun away from the father that missed his first steps and words, preferring other company known to him? For the first time, he chose to confide in someone about it all. Edric listened to every thought without saying a word. In the end, he only gave him 3 sentences of advice. Nonetheless, they resonated through his whole body. It wasn't your fault that you missed his first steps, John. All you can do now is to make sure you are there for all of the others. Be there for him and he will come to you, sooner or later. Afterwards, they talked about other matters. It seemed Edric and his wife were getting along well, his cousin even hinting that he might be falling for the tall umber bride his father had arranged for him. The fact that she had made the journey here freely all the way from Sea Dragon Point clearly touched him, and they had been spending time every day since. Well, while we are on the topic, I have to tell you something too. He started, not knowing how to address this. Edric frowned, but his eyes shone clearly, suspecting something. In Duskendale, I met a young lady, Meredith Riker. Through her mother, she is a cousin of your wife. She intrigues me. She isn't like any other girl I ever met, especially not a southern one. I found myself drawn to Duskendale time and time again and conjured up excuses about supply shipments simply to ride into the town to be able to speak to her. I asked her father permission to ride her just before I left. He gave it to me, all too willingly. Yet, I don't know what I want out of it. I haven't yet visited Lysa's grave or seen our son. It feels wrong for so many reasons, but also right at the same time. He looked pleadingly at his cousin, desperate for advice on the matter. He knew that going to his father or brother with this information directly would have too big an impact on his life. He needed advice from somewhere else first. Does she intrigue you, or is it something more? The expected question hit the wind right out him. It was something he had been pondering for many days now, ever since he had seen the Duskendale harbor grow smaller as waves crashed against the bow and seagulls screeched overhead. Ever since that tall young girl's silhouette on the dock slowly disappeared in the distance. For the first time he spoke the words he had refused himself to believe, no matter how much he lay asleep at night in his cabin. I think it is something more. I think I might have fallen in love with this girl. He admitted, not only to his cousin but also to himself. Edric remained silent for a few seconds, clearly thinking this over. His heart started pumping in his chest, and only now he started realizing how badly this situation, the guilt that he was feeling because of it, had been bothering him. How freeing, and yet excruciating this admission felt. John, his cousin started. Love is something southern minstrels sing about. It is something commoners find amongst each other. Nobles don't find it often, especially not in their marriages. You aren't just a nobles, John, you are a prince. For you it is even worse. Look at your brother. He likes Alara, she is a very good princess, and they have a fruitful marriage together with lovely princelings and princesses that bring the whole kingdom joy. Yet, they don't love each other. It was an arranged marriage, and a good political match. He inhaled softly. I was lucky enough that my father managed to procure me a match with Alara's sister, binding Winterfell and Sea Dragon Point together once more, albeit indirectly this time. I have been spending a lot of time with my wife, with Mara, lately, and maybe I have a small chance of something ever growing there. To have an opportunity like you described before marriage, is a precious thing. It is something your parents had, but it is very rare. Don't waste life's few opportunities pondering whether you are doing right by the dead. We have both lost a lot this past year. We can never regain it. I will never talk to my father again, never ask him for advice or hear him say how proud he is of me. I will never be able to ask again. Whether he is proud of me is something I will ask myself after every decision I make in this life. The same goes for you. His hauntingly purple eyes stared at him. A thing that had always made him feel like he was looking straight into his soul. You will never get the chance to ask Lysa how she feels about this development. You will never be able to discuss it, no matter how hard you wish for the opportunity to do so. But think about it. If she loved you, she would want you to be happy. If she didn't, and you both just shared a comfortable albeit far too short time together, she would understand. You are a Stark of Winterfell, a son to the king. It is your duty to make alliances with your vassals, including marriage alliances. Sooner or later, you will need a wife either way. You will need someone to accompany you at feasts. Someone to distract and enamor the ladies and daughters of nobles while you discuss matters of state. Besides, Artos is a year old. Your son will need a mother figure to care for him. His grandmother won't be there forever, and your father will want your mother to also spend her time on other things. Whether Lysa loved you, I cannot say. Maybe not even you can do that. However, what I can say is that most women want the best for their children. If you want to honor Lysa, do your duty to your infant son. Tell him stories of his birth mother, ensure he has good connections with his maternal kin. But don't let this destroy your only opportunity at something special, especially when it could in time be good for the boy. He let his cousin's words slowly sink in, trying to find a fault in his reasoning. However hard he tried, he couldn't. So what do I do now? He asked softly. Edric grinned. You ask my grandfather for a bird so you can send a letter to this girl. When you arrive in Winterfell, you keep sending her letters. All the while, you visit Lysa's grave and give her all the public and private honors and respect she deserves. She will forever remain the mother of your firstborn son, your heir if the gods allow him to reach adulthood. You talk with her father, show him your maturity in caring for Artos, and your willingness to incorporate House Dustin. Lord Roderick is a valued member of your father's council. He will remain in Winterfell for years to come, and will want to spend time with all that is left to him of his daughter. After a few months of doing that, if you still feel this way about this girl, you tell your father about her. By then, he will probably know because his maester has been telling him of the birds going back and forth to Duskendale. You tell your father you want to marry her and make your case for the benefits a Riker marriage can bring to House Stark. You are lucky. Her father is powerful, and trade is making him rich. You have a chance that your father will agree. After you have said your ordeal, it is up to the gods to decide if he does. That's it? He asked in shock. Edric made it all feel so straightforward. As if the biggest moral dilemma, a decision that could decide his whole life, was just a series of steps he had to accomplish. That's it. That's all a man, a father and a son can ever do, prince or naught. He nodded slowly, mulling over this plan for his future. Thank you. He said, after a long moment of silence, I needed this. Edric smiled sadly. You can always come to me for anything, John, you are the only brother I have left. He didn't reply. He simply thought about Benjen. How he wished he was here with them, but Edric was right. The best thing you could do for the dead was honor them and to keep on living. The end.